No, I 100% agree with you. It's very confusing what to make of this season. We have two games that went to overtime. We lost three games by 3 points or less. Three games also lost by 7 points. So there you got six really close games. We won two. We won one game by 3 points. We won one game by 6 points. So we won a couple of close games. We lost more close games. But the overarching point here is we're in a lot of close games. We're not getting absolutely steamrolled. But I don't want to sound like Gerard Mayo, because this is exactly what Gerard Mayo says. Oh, would you rather me lose by 21? We're losing by 1 and 2 and 3. It's like, don't lose. You're losing, bro. That's like what we're talking about. Like it's like a pass fail.
This isn't hockey.
Yeah, like, what are we doing here? You don't get points, like you get nothing when you lose. Besides a better draft pick. So there is something you get when you lose. And Gerard definitely knows that because he's been talking about the future and how he's thinking about the future. And good, you should be. But also, Gerard, shut up. Just don't talk as much anymore. He had to walk back another statement after the game the other day where he was talking about his his lack of use of the timeout at the 2-point conversion. And, then he had to say I shouldn't have said that the next day. Like, is this it's almost like, can you pick what Gerard Mayo is going to say this week that is going to have to walk back? Because it's something every week and it's getting pretty frustrating. And I think that's an overarching point to go back to your original question of like what to make of this season is I knew that we were going to be this bad. 4.5 wins was the Vegas line, and we're teetering right on 4 wins right now. So like that, yeah, everyone kind of knew we'd be at this win total, but how we've gotten here, I think, is what we're most disgusted with. Why the coach can't get out of his own way. Why the offensive coordinator is the subject of being on the hot seat each week. Same thing with the defensive coordinator. Our receivers seem to be completely junk. The draft was absolutely awful. We got nothing besides Drake May out of it. Like, there's so many complaints to be had. And I thought that a successful season would be winning like 4 or 5 games, maybe 6, and answering a lot of questions. Maybe getting like, oh, Caden Wallace was good, but nobody else was. Oh, Layden Robinson was good, but oh, Polk's fine, or Baker was like. We don't know we don't know anything about these guys besides they all look bad to us. So I'm almost left with more questions, which is troubling when you're in a rebuild, right? You wanted to be at 4 wins with questions being answered, not at 4 wins with more questions.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of why I feel like I'm at this what feels like a conundrum where I go, okay, if 10 wins is off the charts, right? Like for this team, I was down here. I was so low because I'm like, okay, 4.5 wins. If I were a betting man, I probably would have hit the under. I wouldn't have thrown a lot on it, but I would have just,
I hit the over. I went with the over. I thought there was 7 winnable games on the schedule and that they would lose 2 of those winnable games and they would come out with 5 wins. That was my pick. I don't think they're getting there. I'm now an under 4.5 guy. They should have, they had their chances and they blew it, to our point with all these close games. They just didn't come out on top.
Yeah, and that's why I was so low on them that now it like you said, we're I would rather be at 4 wins on the process of answering questions, and we're at the verge of 4 wins, if we're even.
Yeah, we probably won't get there.
And yeah, we probably won't because and I'll get to that in a second. But and now my expectation, it feels worse than my expectations. And so it's funny you brought up the Gerard Mayo comments from what he said on Sunday, because here they are live in person.
Was there any thought to taking a timeout maybe earlier in the drive where the Colts ultimately scored, and what was the thought process?
Absolutely, there was a thought. We've also won a Super Bowl here doing it the other way, and keeping our timeouts is what I thought was best for the team.
I mean, again, you had Gerard Mayo say that the press conference. You had him, when he got the job, go on and talk about how we are going to smash the over on the win totals, that he might be walking back at the end of the season. As of right now, and this is the point I was going to get to in just a second, the Patriots so far have had the easiest schedule in the NFL. And now these final 4 games are going to be the hardest final 4 games in the NFL.
Yeah, the Bills twice.
Exactly. Like, if I wish I was thinking 10 steps ahead, because 3 weeks ago when the Buffalo Bills defense was on my fantasy free agency, I would have scooped them up and just kept them waiting because I knew they would play the Patriots twice.
I got them in every single league as my second defense. Besides, I have the Vikings in almost every league, and I've been riding them. But I'm like, I'm gonna go Bills in the playoffs because they see the Patriots. Well, in my leagues, I don't go to Week 18, so they end. I'm only getting the Bills once, but that's to get me into my finals. I'm going to be using the Bills to get there because, yeah, I mean, why not? Drake May's usually good for a turnover a game, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And, just some of the things. So, like, I want to get to, before we get to talking Mayo and, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but in terms of the comments and everything, like, I want to talk about, that Indy game. I want to go back to that final drive where, again, we get the ball after an awful interception by Anthony Richardson, which the dude, listen, I'm a big Florida guy. You can probably see my helmet, Florida Gators. Like, I work for the football team. I've mentioned that on the show a number of times. And I just missed Anthony Richardson, ironically. But, my thing was I'm watching the dude play at Florida. Like, I'm watching his throwing mechanics. I'm watching how he's playing. And I'm like, man, this kid needs to stay in college. He needs to be there one more year. And I'm not saying that because I want it, because I was, sad he was leaving the Gators. I was saying that because I understand he's going to be the 4th overall pick. But if Billy Napier can work on his mechanics and actually get him to hit a 5-yard crosser, he would be so much better. But 2 weeks ago, the dude threw 44%. This week, he was 12 for 24 at 50%. And he practically gave the game away. But when all was said and done, we were too stupid to know what to do with the football when we got that. It was a little over 2 minutes, 3 minutes left to go. And
2 minutes and 25 seconds, Tim. We had the
2
ball right after an interception. And what does AVP scheme up? Game on the line, right? Like, let's just drain this 225, keep possession, but also scoring finishes them. So, in my mind, you have a rookie QB who is performing well. You don't play timid, but you also don't take any chances, right? You're not like throwing it deep. You're not like putting the ball in double coverage. You're not doing anything crazy here, but you need to get first downs. Run the ball, Stevenson, 2 yards. Run the ball, Stevenson, -3 yards. Drake May sacked, punt. Get the ball back. Jeez, that's terrible.
Yeah, and Bryce Behringer was, just couldn't have been worse for that punt. But yeah, so like, again, that was, and not for nothing. I mean, Pete, do you agree that was arguably Drake May's best game?
One of them, yeah. The passing wise, he had 4 incompletions.
Yeah, he was.
One of them was the Hunter Henry. Probably should have caught it in the end zone. Yeah.
24 for 30, 238, 1 TD, 1 pick. But I look at it and I go, guys, what are you doing? And this is why. The funny part was that little shovel pass to Henry in the very first drive of the game. I was like, oh my God, is Alex Van Pelt actually learning how to be an offensive coordinator and changing things up, using Marcus Jones as a decoy? You
must have been listening to the broadcast. They were glazing AVP way too hard after that play.
I mean, come on. Like, we've seen nothing but basic line up, no motion, throw the football or run the ball up the middle.
So the one time that he breaks that pattern, he's to be applauded. It's like, you should be doing this every week. Finally, that's more how I feel.
Like, I'm not sitting here giving him his roses, but I'm just like, whoa, okay, maybe he's doing something. And then, of course, we're back to the original. Yes. Like, it was just like, there was a glimmer of hope, Pete, a glimmer of hope.
Nah, fool's gold. There was no hope there. I was just like, someone must have yelled at him that he was calling the most boring offense and the most repetitive plays over and over and over again. And I mean, even if you look at AVP in that game, he had his receivers running to the same spot. I mean, there was a play where the opposing team was in zone and you basically had to go high-low on a guy, right? Like, there's a receiver behind and in front, and the defender can't cover both of them, and the quarterback throws it to the open guy, and they ran to like the same spot and allowed the defender to cover them both. It was like some of this stuff. And again, Does AVP teach his receivers to run to the same spot? Definitely not. But what are we doing in practice that they don't know where to go? Like, that is on you in that way. I know he's not teaching them to run to the same spot, but they both got there. And one of the players was Polk. Polk often is in the wrong spot. He doesn't really know what's going on, I don't think. When they moved his locker, he thought that they cut him already. Yeah. And that's not a good first thought to be had. No, it should be, where'd you move me to? Not, oh, really? They got rid of me already? Yeah, because you know, you could have got, they could cut you and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. A high second round pick thinks he already got cut. First thing. And of course, what was the nameplate that he looked up at? It was some no name.
Oh, yeah. They just moved him next to Bourne, right? Wasn't that where they moved him next to a veteran wide receiver? I think, he looked up and saw whoever they replaced him. Yeah, but someone probably at the bottom of the 53 man.
Yeah. And so, of course, you know, offensively, you watch that opening, you're like, oh my God, all right, maybe there's something. And then the rest of the game, just trash, just the same old stuff. Again, like you said, even that was part of the opening drive too. The two, you know, the under and the over, you know, and they both ran the same spot, the same route. And again, when you look at that, it's Hunter Henry as the top guy, Jalen Polk is the bottom guy. Guess who I would trust to pick ran the right route?
Yeah.
You know? And so again, everything just offensively. And it's so funny because I want to get to Drake May and the coaching staff in just a minute, but I want to talk about that final drive, that Indy drive, where they had, what was it,
19 plays?
19 plays with Anthony freaking Richardson. How does Anthony Richardson, who, again, as I've said, cannot complete over 60%, let alone 55% in the NFL, how does he lead a 19-play drive with multiple fourth down conversions and that horrendous missed challenge flag by Gerard Mayo, where the guy clearly did not have possession. The ball hit the ground. And the funny part was the video I showed of Gerard Mayo saying that they're not calling the timeout, you know, and he walked that back. I'm sorry. I want to go to the fact that he said in his postgame that we don't have guys we didn't get the replay in time.
What is that about?
I'm sorry.
That's the most appalling thing that came out of that game.
Yeah, I've been sitting in the coach's box when I was at the Alliance of American Football, right next to the guy on replay, who was the one telling our head coach to challenge or not to challenge. So I don't understand how in the NFL, they don't have a designated guy. And you're telling me that you're afraid to lose a timeout when you have the lead. You're not the one looking to burn timeouts. And throwing a challenge flag, one, could save your defense. You give them a little bit of water. But two, just that, it probably would have been overturned. It probably would have been an incomplete pass.
100% would have 100%. But that's even aside the point. It's coming to the conclusion, should I challenge or not? Because sometimes the refs look at it and they make the wrong decision. Wasn't there a time that we challenged it and they didn't? It was clearly like we made a good challenge and they didn't overrule it. And it's like, you're like, sometimes you get a bad beat, but you have to make the right decision. You have to control what you can control, right? Which is challenging at the right times. And there should be one moron sitting up in the booth, and all he's tasked with doing is staring at a screen. And he has a phone next to him, right? And there's only one person it calls, and it's Gerard. And Gerard only looks down, and it's that guy. That guy's telling you to challenge it, and Gerard doesn't have a say in it. If that guy freaking tells you to do it, you do it. Why we don't have a guy, why he's saying we didn't get the replay in time, it almost makes me think like he was waiting up for the big board to show it so he could review it himself. It's an appalling way to run things. We were talking about this on the Fox Fellas pod. Davidge brought up how the Lions have like 9 guys on their staff, and each one has a small separate task, and obviously one of them's the replay guy. Like, yes, overemploy when you're in this situation. The Patriots don't use analytics. We have an analytics guy, but we don't use analytics. Like when it comes to fourth down, whether to go for it or not, Gerard is not following the analytics model. He's going with his gut and making bad decisions and not getting the proper outcomes. Like, we're just not using the staff, which is another complaint I have about him. Like, if you're using the analytics staff, you're using your challenge staff, and you're having bad outcomes, it's like he's relying on his resources and he's having bad outcomes, right? So it's like, what? Can you hold him totally accountable? Maybe you need to get new guys. But he's not using the help, and he's having bad outcomes. So it's like, now you're extra at fault because you've decided to run solo and put it all on your chest, and you're failing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I just don't believe that they don't have a guy, because every team in the NFL has a challenge guy. Again, Bill and
where is he? Who is this guy? This guy better be on the street. If they have a challenge guy, he better be fired today, because that ball, I'm watching at home eating my freaking pizza, and I can tell them when they challenge the ball better than a guy that gets freaking paid. No way that they have that guy must be mute or blind or something, because there's no way that you're watching that game like casually and aren't screaming at your TV, that ball hit the ground. Yeah. So why can't Mayo do that? Why can't that guy yell at freaking Mayo? I don't get it, and I don't buy that they have a guy that told Mayo, yeah, that ball hit the ground, and Mayo's like, I'm not going to do it. He didn't get the guy in his ear, and like, what are we doing? What kind of operation are we running here? He tells us that he's a CEO, right? He says, I'm not like a head coach, I'm a CEO. He's made this very clear. Wonderful. CEOs run the business. The operations of the business and how the business runs is dependent on the CEO's vibe, tempo, and instruction. Well, how are you managing challenges? The CEO would dictate that, right? Yep. And he would say, this is how I want challenges to be organized in the game. When I'm out there, this is how I want it done. It's his fault if we don't challenge something when we should have challenged something. And they blew it, right? That would have. Oh, yeah. That would have been a huge play, right? That was it. That was 3rd and 10, right?
Yeah, it would have been a 4th and 10. And then you're telling me
they completed a couple 4th downs on that drive, but not 4th and 10s.
Well, I was going to say, and you're telling me that Anthony, because it ended up being what, 4th and 3 right there or something like that afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And then they picked up 11 yards on that play. Just saying.
Jeff, a fun fact.
So they would have got the 4th and 10 anyway, but different play call, different scheme, Yep.
Oh, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you're telling me you have confidence, Shane Steichen has confidence that Anthony Richardson could pick up 11 yards with his arm. I mean, obviously.
They don't because they went for 2.
Yeah.
They do. They either fear Drake May or they don't trust themselves. Maybe a combo.
And that's my next point is they went for 2. Yes, they lined up out wide, with 2 receivers to the left, 1 to the right. You had 2 running backs and Anthony Richardson in the middle.
3 running backs then.
Yeah. How on God's green earth do you not look at that and say, cover the box? They're running with Richardson. It is their DNA. It is what they do. If they're not going to do the tush push because Anthony Richardson is too damn big, too damn strong, and he could be 5 yards back or 3 yards back and pound it right up the middle with his big frame. It was so mind-boggling that the box, they had their guys, and I totally get that Christian Barmore was basically thrown to the ground, classic WWE style.
High low. That was illegal.
Yeah, high and low. Yeah. So I get that. Like, I'm not blaming Barmore, but I mean, how the hell are we not, 8 in the box on that?
So they had 3. They had 3 wide receivers lined up on that play. 2 to the left, 1 out right. They had 1 running back in there and a tight end. So the formation was just slightly different. And when you run 3 wide receivers, you have to have 3 defensive backs. It's mandatory at that point. We had 3 down linemen, 2 outside linebackers on the line. So we had 5 on the line. We had Duggar playing almost like as a pseudo linebacker, and we had 2 other linemen. I mean, two linebackers behind the 3 linemen. So we had a 3-2, and then there was 3 other defenders roaming around. So if you're gonna count, you do have 7 in the box, and maybe 8 in the box if you count Duggar, who's kind of roaming around. Okay. The problem was the illegal block on Barmore and the fact that, I don't know, I think they beat us, right? They just beat us on that play. Like it comes down sometimes to personnel scheme, and a little bit, I hate to say it, a little bit of luck too, with the refs not calling that. I think it was Godshaw had him wrapped up at the 1 yard. I mean, you just needed a second tackler to come in there. I don't know. Peppers was in there too, so I guess if you want another linebacker in there, Christian Ellis, Peppers, and Duggar are behind your line, and Christian Ellis is ultimately the guy who you needed to come and make the support tackle. And I don't know.
I feel like
Christian Ellis is off the streets. If you had Bentley in there, you stop him. So it's like there's so many like personnel comments you could make there. Barmore doesn't get illegally blocked. Godshaw gets some help on the backup tackle, and we win the game.
And I think too that, like you just mentioned, that's where we miss a guy like Jawan Bentley, and that's where
100%.
One of the things that Bill tried to adjust to in his later years of drafting was drafting more of these hybrid linebackers where you look at them and they look like defensive backs, but they try to play like linebackers, or they look like defensive backs, but they're too slow to be defensive backs. So you're kind of in this weird predicament with a lot of our quote unquote linebackers. And it's so, I don't know. And that's where, again, I go to the front office, but I want to go back to, again, just talking about Gerard Mayo. I mean, hell, the reason why this show is called Rotten Mayo, or this episode, excuse me, is called Rotten Mayo, is because all his, talking, all his misspeak and him walking back his comments, all of the miscues that are just so blatant that casual football fans can even look at and be like, well, why didn't the head coach do something right there? The fact that he was a linebacker. You had Mike Vrabel come out several years ago when I want to say it was right around the time that he first got the head coaching gig in Tennessee, where people were like, how can Mike Vrabel was never a defensive coordinator? How can you, right? He wasn't, right? I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so, no, yeah.
Yeah, no, he was, linebackers coach in Houston and then went to Tennessee. But, it was just kind of like, okay, why is he going to be the head coach? And Vrabel just basically said it. He's like, I've had so many NFL years of experience. Do I really need to sit, in the offices and just watch film all day and cut up film all day in order to make my way up the ranks, versus a guy like me or a guy like you?
Texans. He was the Texans defensive coordinator.
Okay, Texans DC. Yeah, but people were still, kind of crapping on him for not rising up the ranks, quote unquote, way too fast.
Yeah, you're right.
And so with Gerard Mayo, I didn't have high expectations, obviously, because we just talked about that. But when I looked at it, I go, okay, maybe Mayo's time playing the game. He did get injured a lot, so he was sitting there with Bill. He was probably watching a lot of game film, trying to teach the linebackers kind of what to see for the weeks where he's not going to be playing. Maybe that will help out. Maybe that will be beneficial to him. But everything that I'm seeing, everything that you're seeing, it hasn't come out right. You're saying that he's going on field. And the funny part is Belichick did the same thing. He went on his instincts. He went on feel. But the difference is Belichick studied like nobody else does. He studied like an intern, where he was in the office all day watching the little quirks like, okay, where's the wind blowing? How is that going to affect the football? Talking to his punter, talking to his kickers, knowing how the ball comes off the right foot versus the left foot for punters. I mean, Gerard Mayo calls himself the CEO. Do you think he's walking in there and acting like a CEO, or do you think he's walking in there acting like a guy who wants to know the nuances, wants to understand how the ball is played differently in this type of weather versus this type of weather? We talked about this on about Super Bowl 53. Belichick nearly stopped the game because he wanted the dome closed. And all of a sudden, the dome being partially open was going to affect the kickoff. Do you think Mayo understands that or would have understood that?
I don't think Mayo can yet. I don't think Mayo's there yet. It's kind of like when you start on a job You're brand new.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, and then you're comparing Gerard Mayo to Bill
Bill Belichick.
Belichick. It's kind of a foolish conversation, really. You know what I mean?
No,
Like the greatest coach of all time versus like a 3-9 guy failing in his first season. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like, like when Mac Jones was saying, you're like Tom Brady, you're like, well, that's a stupid conversation. You know, it's like, look, let's just isolate Gerard Mayo by himself. Like, does he know all the nuances of the game yet? No, he won't until year 5 to 10, right? Like, just like anybody, just like Drake May won't be at the height of his career another 3 to 4 years. Like, there's no way you can expect a person doing something for the first time to be as good as they will be in 5 years. And if Gerard Mayo is just as good now as he is in 5 years, he really fails at progression, right? Like you want someone to progress in their role. So I don't think he has all the nuances down. I don't expect him to have the nuances down, but I expect him to learn from his mistakes. And we talked about putting his foot in his mouth, and he just does it every week. Like learn from your mistakes and learn from your predecessor who was pretty good at not making that mistake in the media. It's like you have plenty of game tape to study on how to handle the Boston media, and that's where I think he's butchering it. He doesn't have like the Vrabel conversation. I thought was an interesting comparison. Vrabel retired and was the Ohio State 2011, and then he went to the Texans, and then he was the Titans. So he went coaching. He coached from 2011 until he got hired by the Titans. Like he was in football. Mayo wasn't like that. Mayo was like kind of out of football and now brought like back into football. You know what I mean? So there's that too to consider that he's been a little bit out. And I don't know. I like the Mayo being that, like getting it when he got hired. I was like, that's fine. I'm not gonna complain and say it should have been because I don't know all the details of behind the scenes. But so far, Mayo versus Vrabel. Doesn't everyone wish we had Vrabel at this point?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And listen, you're right. Like I wasn't. I shouldn't. And I don't think I even was. But I think it's just how like I guess what I'm thinking of is the Chicago, or was it Chicago, the overtime game? Sorry, they're all these, the second loss.
The Bears, the one where they fired the coach after that. Are you talking about?
No, no. The like us, the overtime game where we missed, we played in the wind. What was that second overtime game where he picked the wrong side? Remember that?
Oh, where he picked a kick into the wind.
Exactly. That wasn't Chicago, but
was it the no. Why can't I remember the game?
Yeah, because they're all blending together.
Was it the Rams game?
No, the Titans game.
Titans game.
Yep, it was the Titans game. Okay, and listen, you're right.
Lost by a field goal. Yep.
Even Murdstone to compare Mayo to Belichick is wild. You're right. I totally understand. Like it's not that I was comparing. I'm not trying to say that Gerard Mayo should be Bill Belichick. That wasn't my intention going on that little rant. That I know it sounded like it. I didn't mean it to come across that way. But what I was trying to say was just the little things of, kicking into the wind, then coming on and saying that, oh, the wind changed, even though Drake May talked about his ball that just hung up in the air too long. It didn't change.
Kicking the longest field goal in NFL history into the wind.
Yeah, exactly. Kicking the longest field goal. Like it's these little things where, again, maybe, you know what, as a football fan, I take for granted. I feel like some of these things he should know or he should study. And what I meant by, him walking in as the CEO versus somebody who's filming is watching, studying every little, aspect is Gerard Mayo. I wouldn't be surprised if he's walking in there just trying to run the entire show versus just taking it, step by step. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, and this isn't me comparing Belichick to Mayo, but when the defense was bad, Belichick would, start to spend more time with the defense. He would start to impart his knowledge and wisdom on the defense. Is Gerard, I haven't heard any stories about Gerard Mayo doing that. It seems like it's just DeMarcus Covington, and Gerard Mayo's, keeping his hands back, is not helping is not going to the defense, spending more time with the defense, even though they desperately need help.
He stands on the defensive side at practice. Like he hovers towards the defensive. Like the offense is delegated to AVP and his team, and
Yeah.
like the 7 quarterback coaches that they have, and he's involved in the defensive side of things for sure. But I think that's almost more embarrassing when you have one of the worst linebacker cores and your head coach is a former linebacker. When your defense was decent last year, you called them a top 5. I would wildly disagree with that assessment.
Weren't they
But like,
statistically like top 10?
not if you look at statistics that I think are more important. Like when you play good teams versus when you play bad teams. Look at their points per game versus top 15 offenses versus bottom team offense. I'll give you a little snapshot. Good offenses scored about 28 points per game against them last year. Bad offenses was like 15 points a game. So when you smash them together, yeah, you had a pretty good season, right? Because you played bad teams more than like about half the time. So half your games you played really well, and half your games you got smashed. So it looks not half bad, but yeah, no, this defense is more of what it was last year, but we just had Bill Belichick to bump us up a little bit to make us look just a little bit better. Like, how many more games would we won with Bill at at coach this year? The 2 overtime games and maybe the 2 3-point games, like maybe 3 more games.
Yeah, I think we'd be kind of sitting hovering in the hunt spot right now.
I'm only going to give them 3 more games. Right? Was that 6 and 9?
Well, I mean,
6 and 6.
Yeah, what
6 and 6?
No, we're through 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
Yeah, and Indy is in the picture and in the hunt at 6 and 7. Actually, they're at, I think, the top of the list of in the hunt.
Yeah, you would be in second place right now in the AFC East. Yeah, and maybe we're giving Belichick too many wins. Like maybe it's just 2 instead of.
Maybe.
But whatever. There's at least 1. Minimally, nobody would disagree with that. I don't think that Belichick would have won 1 more game this year, right? So yeah, coaching is hurting our team. Is the bottom line.
Exactly, and speaking of coaching, I would argue that Drake May has improved so much this season because he's that good. He's improved in spite of the.
Thank you. Yes, I was hoping if you said the other thing, we would have had a disagreement.
Well, we would have been going back and forth again. But, with everything that's going on, again, I was the biggest critic of the Drake May's coaches because you have Alex Van Pelt and all of his credentials, T.C. McCartney, his few credentials, Ben McAdoo, who, what was it? Like, people were talking Ben McAdoo around the draft time saying, oh, well, he's the one that found or Patrick Mahomes, or he wanted so-and-so. Huh?
Those stories were true.
No, and I'm not saying that they weren't true, but it's this idea that pick 1, pick 2, pick 3. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, it was consensus, by media pundits, by NFL pundits, former NFL people.
I don't know. There was lots of people talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. There was lots of people talking about trade down, get a tackle. I think it's a little revisionist history to say that Drake May was a drop in their palm of their hand, right? Like there was a lot. I don't think the Patriots ever thought that they were going to do anything different than that. But there was lots of people that would have had that pre-draft were having this conversation. Who should the Patriots pick at 3? Not why we shouldn't even talk about this. It's obviously Drake May. That was not the narrative pre-draft.
Well, now that's where I disagree with you because I would say that, and again, were Marvin Harrison and Joe Alt being thrown at number 3, were the Patriots shown being trading down to the Giants? Yes, I think that was more just because they needed something to talk about.
They called Elliott Wolf. They called Elliott, like the Giants called Elliott Wolf. It's on video.
What was the Giants?
Yeah, would you? Yeah, no, they were during their Hard Knocks.
No, I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like the Giants love Drake May. What I'm trying to get at is, I think the addition of Marvin Harrison at 3 or Joe Alt at 3 was because we were a team that was just in need of everything, and ultimately, I think we all knew like the 1, 2, 3 was going to be Williams, Daniels, and May, and listen, and I like the fact that we got May. At first, I'll be honest, I was a little scared of May. I have never been trusting of North Carolina quarterbacks, especially guys who haven't played a long time, and I know he's 21 or 22, and he's played 2 years of college, whereas every other quarterback in this draft class played at least 5-6 years.
But they were older.
They were older. But again, I've watched everything that this offense has done, and
I'm sorry.
Studying the history of the coaching staffs, the offensive staffs, and I'm just like, and I'm watching how Drake May is improving week to week. That's why I'm sitting here going and agreeing with you, saying that it's Drake May is improving in spite of the coaching staff rather than the coaching staff helping him improve.
He's just this good. He's just him. And when you put him out there, he does him type of stuff. This is Drake May doing Drake May stuff. Imagine if he had like a good offensive coordinator. Imagine how much he would be cooking right now. And that's how you know AVP sucks. Say that one more time.
Ben Johnson as the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, why the hell would he ever do that? Oh, I don't like these the conversations like, why don't we get Ayuk? Why don't we get? Yeah, I mean, this isn't Madden, folks. You can't convince someone to come to an absolutely horrible football team. Like, he's in a way better spot being the offensive coordinator on the Lions.
Well, yeah, but wouldn't you say a lot of coordinators who go on to be head coaches are going on to be head coaches of bad football team? And listen,
you mean they fire Mayo and replace him as head coach is what you're speaking on?
Well, no, I was talking about actually Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft actually doing their due diligence and going out and actually interviewing different
he wouldn't, but why would he go from offensive coordinator on the Lions to be offensive coordinator of the Patriots? One of the best offenses in the league. Wait,
no, I'm saying that Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft should have done their due diligence when looking for head coaches rather than just say, oh, Mayo, you have the job because we promised this to you. No, they should have gone out and I know, like, I get it, but that's where, hey, Ben Johnson, we're going to get the number 3 overall pick, which is probably going to be Drake May. So this can be your guy, you and him tied at the hip for the rest of your careers if it works out.
Yeah, I think that he was holding out because he got head coaching interviews and turned down the interviews even. I don't think he was interested in becoming a head coach. But to your point, they kind of like pre-selected Mayo and didn't give themselves a shot at maybe stumbling upon a better option. Like they closed the door and just focused so intently on this one guy. And now I wonder if they're like, crap, we messed up. Like we shouldn't have done it that way. We should have done it way differently. When it comes to like the offense, when AVP was like their 12th pick. Like nobody wanted to come and be the offensive coordinator. They couldn't get anyone to want to play here. Or sorry, coach here. So like, would they have had a head coaching situation very similar? And so they didn't want to go through the embarrassment. And they're like, Mayo is our guy. We don't want like, what if it's like everyone's talking about Vrabel? What if Vrabel's like, I don't want to coach your team. Are you kidding me?
Well, let's not forget that Robert Kraft was the very first person to put his foot in his mouth because right before Vrabel got fired, he said we would love to have Mike Vrabel coach the New England Patriots, didn't he?
I don't even remember. Why would he say that if he's already Mayo teed up? That's a weird thing. He's probably just saying, I would like to have any Patriots player come and do Patriots things with me. I'm Robert Kraft. I only say positive things. I've never said a negative thing in my life. I'm half drunk half the time. I mean, that's more about Robert Kraft. Like this guy's out here putting together documentaries to get into the Hall of Fame and then weeping when he doesn't. Like, I can't take him seriously.
Yeah, and now doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, which is so
good.
Funny
it's hilarious.
It actually ends up being hilarious. I agree with you because here's the thing. If you told me 10 years ago that Robert Kraft will not get in the Hall of Fame for the next 10 years, I would have been livid. I would have been like, are you kidding me? What?
And you'll win more Super Bowls over those 10 years because we've won in the past decade.
More Super Bowls. Yeah. He was instrumental in breaking the 2011 strike. You have that famous picture of him and Jeff Saturday hugging it out on the steps of the New York courthouse. I mean, and then you have Jerry Jones, the owner who just passed. You have, Eddie DiBartolo, who got his team removed from him because of what he did. You have these owners who are in the Hall of Fame, which again, at the end of the day, the Hall of Fame is not for owners. The Hall of Fame is for players and some of the elite coaches in the NFL. But it's just it really has gone so far with me where 10 years ago I would have been livid. I would have been like, that is ultimately ridiculous. Ban Canton, Canton, Ohio sucks, all this stuff. Versus now I'm sitting back after everything that we've been through as Patriot fans in 12 months, let alone the last 5 years, where I'm like, you know what? It's kind of good. I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. Keep the fire under his ass to keep chasing it too, right? Hopefully,
yeah. And the fire under his ass is, here's my book. Here's my book. See what I did? I brought Tom Brady here. I brought Bill Belichick in here.
If he wins the Super Bowl with Mayo and Drake May in 3 years from now, then he's in, because he did it. He did it round 2, right? He didn't just do it with Belichick and Brady. He didn't just stumble upon these two guys. Although he didn't stumble upon Belichick, he gave up a first-round draft pick for Bill Belichick. So that's a hefty price to pay at the time. But to the Hall of Fame, these guys are 100 years old that are getting put into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who are these guys? Maxie Bond? Like, I don't even know who these guys are. Well, and that makes me think, like, does Robert Kraft need to be like dead to get into the Hall of Fame? Do you need to be like 100 years removed?
That's why he's pushing so hard, is because he wants to make that effing speech like on.
While he can still stand and not be in a wheelchair. Like, he's gonna be. Yeah, he wants to do it while he's still able to talk, I think. But yeah, the Hall of Fame is silly. I mean, you got Ralph Hay from 1980. Like, who are these guys? They're
who's the guy that they just he's not elected, but they moved him instead of Robert Kraft, which is funny because the guy they chose over Robert Kraft, he allegedly was like the co-founder of the NFL, and him and George Halas, either coached George Halas or George Halas learned under him or something to that effect, where it's like, who is the one man in this entire sport who would know about this guy? And the answer is Bill Belichick.
Of course.
Oh, like, doesn't it just make sense? Like, Bill loves the history of the game. And not for nothing, I do too. Like, I'm a big history guy. I love going back and studying, all the teams and the famous coaches and players and all that. But like, when I saw that, and I heard somebody mention this, it's like, who would know? Who would know about this guy? Oh, Bill Belichick would. And it's like, bingo, right there. That's maybe, and again, I'm not saying that Bill spoke to the guys and said, hey, put this guy in over Kraft, but I mean, let's be real. Like, everything that's gone on, I would not put it past him.
I mean, it does feel like a troll job by the voters, right? I was listening to 98.5, the Sports Hub, and someone was talking about it's almost like they're doing it to be spiteful of them, and they called the voters know-it-alls. Like, they're picking these contributors, and I mean, like, everyone knows Mike Holmgren, but like, other than that, like, who are these guys? Like, it's almost like, we're smarter than you. Look at who we're voting into the Hall of Fame. Like, instead of picking like people we all know, like good name. Like, when you go to the Hall of Fame, you want to see like, oh, look at that, it's Bill Belichick. Oh, Robert Kraft. Like, you want to see all the names, right? And all the people you actually know. Like, no one's gonna know Ralph Hay. I guess that's why he's in the Hall of Fame, right? Or potentially because you don't know who he is, and now you do because he's he contributed a lot. Blah blah blah. But I don't know. I do kind of agree with the 98.5, the Sports Hub assessment that these voters are kind of being know-it-all little troll jobs, and I'm okay with it.
And the worst part is, so the funny part is, when you compare Cooperstown to Canton, you at least with Cooperstown, we know who these guys are voting for. We can shit on them all we want and say, hey,
accountability.
Like, get Barry Bonds in there, get Clemens in there, get all these guys who, all right, they took steroids, but you know what? The game was better. The game was funner when that was going on. But with Canton, these guys, they hide in secrecy. We can't call them out. We can just sit there and complain and do this. But at the end of the day, man, it's just, it's crazy. So,
you care who gets in the Hall of Fame?
I mean, kind of. So again, I've done the research. When you look at You know what? I didn't have it up on me, but so I looked at the 60s Packers, the 70s Steelers, the 80s Niners, and the 90s Cowboys. And I actually kind of I did the 70s Cowboys as well. But when you look at those dynasties and then look at our dynasty, and what I try to do is I try to limit it to pure Steelers, pure Niners, pure Cowboys, where they spent a bulk of their careers playing for those franchises, and they only left, if they left, or they weren't
like
there.
Randy Moss wouldn't count for the Patriots, and
Randy Moss wouldn't count. Darrelle Revis wouldn't count. Junior Seau wouldn't count.
All fair.
That's kind of what I tried to do when looking at the others as well. And it is amazing how, I think, if memory serves, the 60s Packers have like somewhere between 11 to 15 guys. The Steelers have roughly the same. The Niners have about 8 to 10 guys. The Cowboys in the 90s have about 5 to 8. And then the Patriots, 2.
You think that's just because of time? How we just mentioned it takes forever to get in. Like, if in 50 years from now, will it even out?
Yeah, well, I try to look at that. And again, most of these, I think the problem is we are so saturated with all of football, like seeing football all the time, seeing it everywhere, being able to watch it every week, every game, every week.
Freaking Red Zone's amazing. But yeah, it really locks you in. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, the reason why All-Star games were invented in the first place were because, I as a Bostonian, it's not like I'm watching San Francisco and seeing, the old timers every week. It's like, if they weren't on, they weren't on.
Right.
And that's kind of where, I'm wondering kind of, I think the thing is, at the beginning of the Hall of Fame, they were just letting dudes in left and right because, hell, we have to build up our credentials. It's not like we're picking from.
We can't have an empty hall.
Exactly. You can't have an empty hall. So I think that's kind of what they did at the beginning of it. And now they're being just super strict. And I'm sorry, Rodney Harrison should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. The one of 2 men to have 30 interceptions and 30 sacks. I think the only defensive back to have those stats. Like, that's crazy to me.
Back when you could hit people too. He was laying out bodies.
Oh, laying people out. And that's the thing with the Baseball Hall of Fame is those guys are the MLB Writers Association are just petty a-holes. If you were an a-hole to them, they were like, haha, even though you hit, 700 home runs, I'm not going to vote you in.
Yeah, why is that a part of the baseball hall? You have to be a nice guy. Well, although when Kurt Schilling's kept out, I'm like, good, keep him out. He's a piece. But other people I want in.
Yeah, but baseball, but like on the field, like obviously he should be in the Hall of Fame.
I don't know.
On the field.
I don't even look at the numbers because he's just a huge pile of crap.
I know. I don't want to get into that.
I mean, the Red Sox seem to have a theme here with the Chapman signing too, that, piles of crap on the Red Sox. So, I mean, not a character hire there.
No. And so, yeah. So speaking of,
sorry to derail there into, I don't know how he got there, but my fault.
You know what? Because actually that fit in perfectly because we, to go into talking about the Red Sox and going into kind of what has been going on with them. First, before we get into Chapman, I just want to know, how much of your Thanksgiving did you spend on Twitter refreshing for Soto's giving there?
0 time. 0 time spent. I haven't spent any time thinking about Soto. I don't care because when it happens, it will happen. And it really grinds my gears, like this anticipation and how people keep breaking the news. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not scrolling to look for it, but I can't help but see it. So I know
It's there.
exactly what you're talking about, right? It's there. It's in my face. I can't help. As a Red Sox fan, if you're on Twitter and you follow Red Sox, it's a Soto. But I don't like people breaking news that Soto's going to sign for this amount and not come true. And it's like, yeah, you know what? There's two outcomes here. He signs with the Red Sox or he doesn't. So if you break the news, you have a 50% chance of being right. You don't know shit. Shut the hell up. I only believe people that actually have the scoop, and nobody's really got the scoop, right? It will come out when it comes out, is now because we've saturated the whole entire media market with different ideas. Mets are the leader. Yankees are the leader. Red Sox are the leader. But the Yankees just signed this guy, so they don't have enough money anymore. But then this other guy, Yankees have endless amounts of money. Oh, now the Dodgers are in. Nobody knows anything is what I'm gathering, right? So I spent zero time trying to figure out if somebody knows something, because I know nobody knows nothing.
Exactly. At the end of the day, like, you're just sitting there going, like, what are we doing? And not for nothing, I'll admit, I got wrapped up a little bit. In Soto's game.
Of course.
I was kind of looking at it going, oh, wait, the Red Sox are in front. Oh, maybe this guy is real. Oh, he's writing in Spanish. He knows Spanish. Okay, great. You know, like, he speaks Juan Soto's language. Like, there's all these crazy things that were just coming out that ended up, like, looking back on it, can't help but laugh. But not for nothing, on top of the football that was played on Thursday, it made Thursday a lot of fun. Even though nothing ended up happening, obviously. But
yeah, it was a nothing burger. Well, how is it fun to have nothing happen?
Because it's just, I think it's funny just to look back on it now. You get to kind of laugh and be like, oh, all right, yeah, it was kind of foolish. It's kind of stupid, but fun nonetheless. But
yeah, right. Tell me when he signs somewhere, because that will be interesting to talk about, where he signs and how he fits in with that team and what that means for the other teams that are now out and the other players that are now waiting, because it's a domino. Soto goes first, and then other names can go after. So there is, a lot coming down to this signing, and it would be nice if he made that decision soon. But I don't know if you saw Vladdy in the post today too. I don't know if that's on the agenda. I think Vladdy might be an interesting fit.
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, I've been I couldn't care less about Tristan Cassis, especially after. Why?
On the field or off the field is the why.
It's more off the field than it is on the field. I think
who cares what he does off the field is my take. Like, what? Who cares if he paints his nails and
not disrespect the greatest hitter of all time in Ted Williams. I don't care.
What do you say about Ted Williams? I missed that.
The Ted Williams seat.
What do you say? But I missed it completely. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Earlier this season, after he came back from his, getting stabbed and shot in the ribs, which that was wild. But he's like, I hit that ball so well that, that it proves that Ted Williams' seat is a myth.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, I'm sorry. As somebody who loves to study sports history, Ted Williams is the greatest hitter in baseball history. He wrote the book on how to hit, and everything that, and with that, I was just so taken aback. And the funny part was a lot of, former Red Sox and current Red Sox came out and were like, yeah, it's a myth. And
but the quote is important. I think you might have misquoted him slightly.
Did I?
I just looked. He said that Ted Williams' seat is starting to feel more like a myth. I've been hitting bombs for years and I haven't come close. No disrespect, Mr. Ted Williams was a great hitter, but as far as being strong, I don't know if he was stronger than me and former first baseman Mo Vaughn. He wasn't. Ted Williams was not stronger than you. He was a lefty that was able to, they moved the bullpens in for him. The bullpens weren't there, and they built the bullpens to move in right field to make it closer for him, which is fine. You're allowed to, you had to build the bullpen somewhere. It's a necessary thing, the bullpens, and everyone has them in the outfield, and that makes way too much sense. And I'm not saying that helped, that's not like a thing the Red Sox.
I know what you're saying.
Right field got a little bit close, right? So he actually had it further away for part of his career too. Missed a bulk of his career to go serve our country, which I think Cassis misses out on. And hitting a baseball far has a lot to do with more technique and the velocity of the pitch coming in and just like the square contact, than it has to do with just being huge and strong. Although steroids, right? When everyone took steroids, everyone hit more bombs. So there is something to be said about being strong, obviously. But if you can't make contact, you don't have proper timing and technique, the ball's not going to go out of the stadium. It's just 101. And in the science of hitting, you brought up Ted Williams' book, right? Like that talks about all of that, the slight upswing, making contact with an unbroken wrist. I mean, I've read the book. The guy who he names his successor, Ted Williams, was a science of hitting. He was an expert. He taught someone how to teach his lessons. He was my baseball coach down in Hanson. So like, if someone knows Ted Williams' hitting principles, it's that guy, and then it's me. So Ted Williams is a master of hitting, right? Like Ted Williams is a freaking master of hitting. I could talk about his techniques on hitting for days. So, and I don't think if Ted Williams was here, he would say, yeah, no, Casas, you are stronger than me. You do hit bombs.
Yeah.
I'm a way more scientific hitter than you. That's why I was able to reach that seat that one time. I think that's how you explain that. But Casas is like looking at it going, man, I'm launching these absolute moonshots and I can't reach the seat. This is starting to feel a little fishy. I don't mind him thinking that thought, but shut up and don't say it. Like Mayo does the same thing. Like you have a thought that like you can talk about with your boys, but don't release it to the Boston media. Do you know what we are? Holy crap. Like it's missing the mark, I think.
And I will say this too. Again, you brought up the fact that the bullpens were moved in and made in the outfield. Don't forget too that Fenway Park did not have the upper deck that it has. So the wind was very different. The wind flow was very different. So and I've mentioned that before too when I've gone on this rant about Casas and the disrespect, or what I call the disrespect of Ted Williams.
So it's off the field with you with Casas. It's not on the field.
Well, yeah, it's
on the field.
Yeah,
I don't have tons of Casas
the only on the field thing that I kind of have a problem, and this you might not classify this as on the field, but it is the dude is very injury prone. Like
that's on the field. Games played is an on the field stat.
Yeah, so to me, like that's my only on the field gripe with him. Where again, it's not like I hate him because he's not playing all the time. It's just like it's would be
a fact
nice.
of the matter.
Yeah,
if you play a third of the season,
majority of the season, it's a lot of the off the field stuff. Again, kind of like what you mentioned, the Boston media. We're crazy, We're like we take these things again. Casas talking about the rib pain that he was feeling. And again, I'm not saying that he wasn't dealing with pain, but the fact that he equated the pain to being stabbed and shot. And again, I might be, whatever. Paraphrasing. Thank you. I was just like, you have got to be effing kidding me with this dude, And so, listen, I saw the Vladdy post. I saw the Vladdy like on that post, and not for nothing, I wouldn't mind saying sayonara, Tristan Casas. Here, you go be some other, city's media love fest because of all the quotes that they're going to get from him.
What about when he had that quote about like how many swings have you taken, and he's like hundreds in the air, like in my mind, or what he said, like in my mind. Like I like Casas and everything, but he's wild. In my mind, I've taken 100 swings. Like, brother, that's not how that works. We're asking if you swung because you have a physical injury, and we want to know how that's feeling.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care about your mind swings, bro. I played a lot of MLB this show. It's almost like saying that, like, cool. Like, that's not what we're asking.
You have no idea how I visioned being up there in the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, bases loaded, World Series, Game 7. And I hit a home run and I didn't even move. Oh my God.
How much did they pay you? Like, did you get a contract after that? Like, what happened next? Like, oh God. And then I woke up. What is going on? Yeah, like I don't know what's happening with that stuff. But if on the field he's going to get on base at the rate that he does, if he, can play good defense, if he can do the things that a first baseman's asked, then you can paint your nails, you can suntan, and you can question Ted Williams if you're going to be really good, right? But if you're going to play 60 games a year and be mediocre, then you can't do any of those things.
Exactly.
See you later.
And so that's kind of the gripe, part of the gripe that I have is that, he's shown these flashes, but because he hasn't been on the field, because he's been, injured so much, I don't know if he's this successful player that he thinks he is or that we want him to be. So
we have no idea. We need to see another season out of him. The move Cassis now crew, I'm not in on. I want to see more out of him. I think his value is way too low right now to move him.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. Like, I don't know. Again, it's all speculative what his value is, and you're right. Like, to some degree, I think you're right. I think that it is very low. Because
isn't it his last year of arbitration this year?
Coming up.
Like he has arbitration this year with the Red Sox.
This year. Okay. Maybe.
Which makes your value because you have to sign a contract, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not that good, if you're getting injured.
Player controlled, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then Vladdy, when is his contract up? And next year?
Really?
Or no, he's in the middle of it. So we would have to trade in the middle of it, right? Or no, his contract is coming up. His contract is coming up.
I thought he signed a deal already.
No, is it the 7-year deal that he signed? Hold on, I need to Google it because let's see, Vlad. But anyway, I would really like Vladimir. Vladimir Guerrero versus Casas isn't a conversation, right?
No.
Like it's obviously Vladdy, but why we're talking about the contract, I think, is important because that's what it's all about, right? Are you going to be able to pay Vlad contract versus Casas, who's on arbitration, and pennies? So it's like that's why I think Casas this year is the move from the Red Sox perspective because they think about the tax, they think about the money, they're very involved with the budget, and Casas budget wise makes a whole lot more sense than going to get Vladdy or doing any of those things.
So then let me ask you: would with everything being equal right now, I can't even put together a trade proposal, but I'm just saying, if we were to trade, we wouldn't give up at least 3 of our top prospects. So let's say Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, and Christian Campbell. Are here. Marcelo Meyer is part of the deal. We sent to Toronto to take Vladdy before the Soto deal, before the pitchers. Would you do that? And again, I know it's super speculative because I'm not giving you like a full trade. I'm just saying, would you trade for Vladdy Guerrero right now before Soto, before trading for Crochet, signing Burns, signing Fried? Would you do that right now in hopes that it might entice Soto a little bit more?
No, and I wouldn't do it for Soto. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's why I would want to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I would want to trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if we were 100% sure Casas wasn't the guy and that Devers couldn't move to first. If I knew those two things, like I'm Pete, I'm going to go play video games after this. You know what I mean? Like they do this for a job. They show up to work and they know their team very well. So I would want to ask them a series of questions. Do you believe in Casas? If no, let's move in this direction. Do you believe in Devers moving over to first? Because we're trying to use internal first, right? Like we're trying to solve this problem internally. Yep. Can we move Devers? No, we don't believe in Devers. So we have a hole at first base. We think first base is very important. Now, your first base hole, where does that rank on your team as far as importance go? Like, how do you want to use your budget? Is starting pitching more important? Is your back end bullpen more important? Is defense up the middle more important to you? And then they would have to answer those questions, right? Like, where do they rank first base on their importance level? It can't be at the top of their list. It shouldn't be at the top of their list. Mm-hmm. So I don't want them to move the farm system for not their top need.
Okay.
But if they assess it differently,
yeah.
Yes, first base is our top need. We have everything else solved. If we could just get a first baseman, that would really push us over the edge. Yes, you should trade for a really great, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hits 40 bombs potentially. You should trade for him then. I would need to know where their head's at and what they're trying to do and what they've self-assessed as. The first example is what I think is true and what I think is more likely. Like try to solve it internally, realize you can't, but then realize first base isn't the top priority either.
Oh yeah.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think we all know that first base is not the
not it
by any stretch of the imagination. Especially with Casas and
you have an option there, right? A potential Casas could work.
Casas could work, or maybe Devers moves from third to first. Who knows? But there are multiple ways to solve that problem internally. Right now, I was just thinking that, hey, you know what? Maybe if we trade for Vladimir Guerrero, we don't give up everything or a bulk of it. Maybe that would entice Juan Soto. I mean, there's been speculation left and right that with the addition of Soto, we'd go out and get Vladdy, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But yeah. So speaking of bullpen arms, I hate the fact that we signed Aroldis Chapman, and the funny part is, let's not forget that in 2016, we nearly traded for Aroldis Chapman from Cincinnati. And then we found out all his dirt and all his history that we then reported to the Reds and said, hey, this guy that you got, he ain't good. And then what happens? He goes and becomes a Yankee. And now now we sign him. And yeah, he's still got velo on his arm. No two ways about it. He's still in the upper 90s. But he's going to be 37. He, has done just a lot of just bad things that I cannot understand why we got him.
I think it's because we need back end bullpen help, right? I mean,
we do. Like I get it, but you know what? I'd rather spend a few extra bucks and get somebody else. And I know, me, it's not my money, but at the end of the day, the Fenway Sports Group is second or third worldwide in terms of how much money they're raking in. Like you're telling me that they have all of that allocated?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll judge the body of work is how you judge a MLB offseason, right? This could be a very tiny piece of their back end bullpen.
I hope so. At least
if it's a huge piece of their back end bullpen, it's alarming. But we have no idea where he fits on the depth chart, so to speak, right? On the hierarchy. He hasn't had an ERA under 3 since 2019, so he's not your closer. I don't think he can be your closer, right? That's
absolutely
you need a sub 3 ERA. You need to be right around 3, right? Like you can't be letting up four runs per 9 innings and being a closer. It's a ridiculous statement. But you did mention he touches 98 miles an hour pretty consistently on his fastball, which is heat. It's exactly what you want as a setup or a closer. But he's a bad man. Domestic abuse isn't good. And then he has weird stuff with his mom too. I don't know. He's just a freaking weirdo. And like, while you're trying to change the image of the team, and like, because I feel like lots of Red Sox fans freaking hate the ownership. And now you have ownership signing this wife beater. And you're like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, I will not support Chapman. And if I go to Fenway, I'm going to let him hear it, because it's ridiculous that people the NFL does it the worst, but like these major league athletes who hit women that are allowed to continue to walk around and make a full salary and not have to give up like half their salary to victims or their victim is just absolutely insane. And I think it's basically a crime, in my opinion, because if I did any of those things, my company would not allow me back. They wouldn't suspend me.
Yeah. Fired immediately.
No
questions asked.
Not welcome back.
Nope. And you get labeled. I mean, granted, he's labeled and he has been labeled, but
he's getting paid millions of dollars with a label.
He's still getting paid. Yeah. 1 year, $10 million. Like I cannot justify this. Like I don't care if he all of a sudden starts putting up 105 and has a 1.5 ERA. I don't care. I will hate it. Huh?
It would bug me.
Oh, I would hate it to my core, because there are few things in life that I am just sure of, and domestic abuse is one of those things that I just vehemently dislike. And the fact that you had, I feel like the only NFL player, maybe the only major league athlete to ever blatantly do that and just not be welcome back was Ray Rice.
He's welcome back. I'm sorry to break it to you. He's honored in the stadium. He has his name up in the stadium, and they brought him back for a special Ray Rice Day.
Are you serious?
I couldn't disagree more with that assessment. Ray Rice is honored.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that they
no. Ray Rice. To us, to me and you?
Yeah.
Yes, disgraced. We would never talk about Ray Rice in any other fashion besides to mention how he's a bad human. Baltimore does not feel that way.
That's okay. And again, talking about the Hall of Fame, I not sidetracking, but he wasn't. He was good for 2 years. He wasn't good for his entire career. That's wild to me that he's in the friggin' Ring of Honor in Baltimore. But
Yeah, it's crazy. Greg Hardy is another one, right? Like
oh
went to
god,
the
yeah,
UFC after doing like no, there's just you could go down the list. I don't need to
down
bring
the
up
list.
bad
Yeah,
times, but yeah, there's just there's too many examples of this for it not to be a chief complaint.
yeah. And the funny thing is too. So with ownership, everybody hating ownership, I am chief number one of just my hatred for this
Shocked.
ownership group. And so my thing is, if they go out and do that, the only way that they can make it up in my eyes is going out and getting every single guy out there right now. Like, I know that sounds insane. Hey, just throw money at it, baby. Come on.
Earn some cash.
Earn some cash. Let's go.
Go full throttle.
Full throttle. Though I never want to know how Tom Warner lives his life. Let's be honest. That was
Full throttle.
Yeah, I live my life full throttle, Tom. I don't need to know that.
Let's go Red Sox. Like the dude doesn't get it at all.
No,
I hate
absolutely.
the full throttle was last year's model. This year's go all in. I don't need their taglines. Tell me who you sign and I'll judge the body of work. So far, I've been thoroughly disappointed in the previous years. It's too soon this year to have a disappointment.
Of course. And I'm not there. I'm not judging that. I am judging the fact that they signed Aroldis Chapman.
Every day I'm judging them. Don't you worry.
Yeah. But I will say, though, okay, so I know a lot of Red Sox fans are talking about how, this will be the most expensive offer that they've ever made a player, which then reinstates the fact that, the ownership is back, which I'm sorry, I disagree with. I believe that the only way I can accept the fact that they made an offer to Juan Soto is the fact if they sign Juan Soto. If they sign Juan Soto and go out and get either Corbin Burns, Max Fried, trade for Garrett Crochet, then you can talk to me and say, then I might change my tune on the Red Sox ownership. But even if they offer Juan Soto, let's say $660 just to throw it out there, and he still signs with the Mets or the Yankees, I'm still going to look at that offer and say, big deal, big whoop. That doesn't change anything for me. I understand it might for some, but to me, it's like, nope, you are interest kings, baby. You are interested in this guy, interested in that guy. Yeah, you actually ponied up the money, but at the end of the day, you still didn't get him.
Yeah, so, and I don't know if my criticism would be that they're not willing to spend. If that was the scenario, my criticism will be like, why aren't you an attractive place to play anymore? Like, how'd you create this culture that people don't want to come here anymore? Because if your money is just as good as anybody else's money, in fact, is better than New York's money with the tax that they have. I think it's like 11%, and here it's 9%. And it's like whatever the percentage is, it's lower here than it is New York. So we have a better offer than the Mets and the Yankees if we go apples to apples with them. A lot of times people call us Taxachusetts, right? And like we can't compete with Florida. Well, we're competing with New York, which they're a higher tax than us, so we win in this scenario. Yeah. So, I mean, if they're in on every single big name and they lose out, but they all have competitive offers, I'm like, man, the Sox are trying to be spenders, but they just have egg on their face because they can't land anyone with competitive offers. They'll need to blow someone out of the water in order to get people to come here, which means people don't want to come here. Or they're just in on Soto and then they're not in on anyone else, and they're kind of fakers and they're kings of interest, like you said. Well, that's why I want to judge the body of work. In years past, we already know what happened, right? Full throttle, nothing. So liars.
Yep.
That's what they are so far. They can never, every year I give them a new chance to become truthful, right? We're going to be big spenders. Well, go put in very competitive offers on everyone then. That's what we used to do. It used to be the Red Sox. Oh, there's a big free agent name. Bet we're going to be in on them.
We're in on them.
Yeah, probably. Like it just was the assumption, right? We'll probably be in on them unless when we had if we had Manny and left, we're not going after the big left fielder. Like there's obvious ones that we don't need to be in on. So like it almost felt like we could predict what the Red Sox would do. Like they'll probably be in on that guy. They'll probably give a good push. Now we're like, please, it makes so much sense. Just please do it. And like they don't, and it's like, why? That's more about like back in the day, it felt like it was going to go well.
Yeah, and the one other gripe too that I have with some Red Sox fans is when you push back, when you give all this stuff out, you're like, I can't stand this ownership, blah blah blah. They still want to sit there and tell you to your face, oh, well, they brought you 4 World Series. Aren't you happy with that? And it's like, oh, I'm ecstatic. I love the fact that we saw the Boston Red Sox actually win a world title. Like that was unheard of just 20 years ago. But now I look at it and I go, listen, I'm still thankful for those trophies. But at the end of the day, it's about what you're doing today. What are you doing for me now? And what you're doing for me now is you're kicking your feet up. You have the TV on some cheap ass Netflix movie, and on your phone, on your laptop, just opened up on the side of your couch. You're like, oh yeah, the Red Sox are on. All right, whatever. I'm watching this. Like, that's what John Henry and this ownership group feels like they're doing. In which case, that's why all this nonsense about full throttle, being interest kings. I don't care that they have 4 world championships to their name. What are you doing for me now? That is what matters the most. And Pete, you're right. And I'm right there with you. Every single offseason, I am sitting there going, okay, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Go out and sign that big name free agent. Go out and do it. But every single year, they come up the same exact way. I look at the roster and I go, yep, we're going to suck again, baby.
500, baby.
500 right down the pike. Like it's just boring, and then of course the season, it's 162. You get your hopes up for that like quick month. And then the dog days of summer, you get brought right back down to earth. So it's one of those things. The Red Sox are the Red Sox right now. And until they sign the guy, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for it till they sign him. I don't care that they could offer him $700 million. If he doesn't sign it with the Red Sox, if Soto doesn't sign with the Red Sox, then my offseason is teetering to being just classic Red Sox unless they go out and make those 2 big starting pitcher moves that they keep claiming they're going to do. So,
they won't. They're going to let you down.
Yep.
Dude, take my strategy. It's much easier, Tim. Just expect absolutely nothing and let them to completely disappoint you. And so when they do, you're like, yeah, I told you so. And if they surprise you with something good, you're like, wow, the Red Sox actually did something. That's a way better way to live your life.
Oh, trust me, that's how I've lived my life the past.
You need to. You'd be a madman if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like those guys, those Red Sox nerds that are just like always talking. Like I don't understand how Boston sports fans are so to the point where it's like everything is awesome, right? Like I feel like the most down to earth Boston sports fans are more Bruins fans than anything because they know better. They know that expect disappointment more than any team in Boston. But I don't know. It's just it's just one of those things that
we got a lot of pink hats right now. That's my take on Red Sox. The conversations used to happen at Fenway. Yeah, I don't really go to Fenway anymore. I don't want to support this ownership. The product's horrible, and when you go, it's half away fans. So it's like they've trashed like the idea of Fenway Park going to it. Like it's still awesome. Don't get me wrong. When I go to Fenway Park, you got like that unavoidable grin the entire time. The smell, the move, like it's freaking awesome. Like I'm not like I love it, and I hate that they took it away from me. That's what I think I'm the most upset about is I want to go and love this team. And I go and I'm like, yeah, all my Sox gear. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot Aroldis Chapman's on this team. I forgot that we're going to blow the Soto thing. I forgot that go down the list of like all the items that we have as complaints. I'm like, oh, this team freaking embarrasses me. And then you get all upset and like, you want to be happy because you're in your happy space, but you're watching this pile of dump, like, I don't know. It's just a very frustrating time to be a Red Sox fan, Bruins fan, Patriots fan, Celtics fan. I'm okay.
Celtics fan, right there. We have it. Where am I pointing? Right there. There it is.
It's so tough when you're out.
I know when you try to do it backwards. I'm like, right there, baby, champions. All right. Well, Pete, thank you so much, my man, for joining. Everybody, please, see again backwards. Give this man a follow at Pete_Collins_. Don't forget, please, watch his Foxborough Fellows podcast every Monday and Friday?
Monday and Friday nights at 7.
Monday and Friday nights at 7. Pete, thank you so much for joining the show. As for myself, Tim, I'm your host, Tim, of the Boston Sports Summit. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow on X at Boss Sports Summit, on YouTube, Boston Sports Summit, and on Instagram at Boston Sports Summit. We are presented by the Grid Network, where we got a ton of great content, a ton of great shows. So check those out as well. Pete, once again, thank you so much. And everybody who stayed with us and watched throughout the night, thank you so much. And God bless. Have a great rest of your night.